Freddy's coming for you. 3, 4, better lock your door.
Freddy Krueger might be one of the most iconic horror villains in the history of cinema. He was first introduced to audiences back in 1984 with the Wes Craven written and directed A Nightmare on Elm Street. The film told the story of a child murderer named Freddy Krueger, who was killed by the parents in the town of Springwood after the court system failed to do its job and let him free. He would then come back to get his revenge on those parents by taking their children one by one in the only place they couldn't protect them: their dreams. The film was a huge success and would lead to 6 sequels, a crossover movie, and a remake. It's hard to put into words just how big Freddy was during the 1980s. He was pretty much everywhere. You can find him on MTV in music videos like the Fat Boys' Are You Ready for Freddy?
It's time for Freddy. See, I'm a popular guy.
Children's Halloween costumes, a talking Freddy doll, video games, and he even had his own 1-900 number where you could waste your parents' money listening to pre-recorded messages from the man himself.
Freddy Krueger has a special message just for you.
$1.50 for the first minute, 35 cents each additional minute.
On top of all this, he even got his own TV show. Freddy's Nightmares, or A Nightmare on Elm Street the Series, came out in the fall of 1988, just 2 months after the most successful Nightmare film at the time, The Dream Master, was released. The series was an anthology show similar to The Twilight Zone. However, one major difference is each episode would feature 2 stories, with the second story focusing on a side character from the first. And you'd think with a name like Freddy's Nightmares that Freddy Krueger himself would be a big part of it, but he really isn't. He was mostly a Rod Serling, Crypt Keeper type host that would appear in the wraparound segments for each episode. Though he did appear in 8 episodes as the main antagonist, the producers at New Line knew they couldn't just have a show about Freddy killing teens, because eventually he would end up killing everyone and the show would just get stale. The very first episode of the series, titled No More Mr. Nice Guy, was written by Michael DeLuca and David Ehrman and was directed by Tobe Hooper, the man best known for directing the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The episode is basically an origin tale on how Freddy became the infamous Dream Stalker, but with a few minor changes here and there, and a strange focus on not the children of Elm Street, but the police officer who put him away. The episode starts with a newscaster who gets teleported, somehow, to the outside of the courthouse where Freddy's pre-trial hearing is being held. Freddy is shown locked in some glass box as photos of his victims are presented to the judge, but throughout the episode you'll notice that they do everything they can to hide Robert Englund's face. I'm not exactly sure why, because he has been shown outside of the Freddy makeup before.
We were able to identify him through his dental records.
Freddy's defense lawyer definitely looks like the kind of slimeball that would try to get a child murderer set free. I mean, just look at him. He definitely has small man syndrome. Apparently, Lieutenant Timothy Blocker forgot to read Freddy his rights when he arrested him. But it's hard to read someone their rights when you're more focused on protecting your daughters. But because of this, Freddy is set free due to a technicality. This differs from the film version slightly, because in that he was set free because someone signed the search warrant in the wrong place, again letting Freddy off because of someone's screw up. We suddenly get to see in Freddy vision, and it looks like I'm watching this on a Sega CD. This hanging dummy hilariously loses its head, which I'm not sure was supposed to happen, but if you can't tell, this show is very cheap. It almost looks like a high school stage production. So now Freddy is back on the loose and the parents are pretty pissed at Tim. It's okay though, because he hates himself. Freddy nearly got his girls and he had his chance to take him out. Instead, his one daughter now barely speaks after what she went through, and well, Freddy could return. The parents, including the prosecutor, have had enough of a failed court system and have now decided to take things into their own hands.
Together again. Are you ready for Freddy?
Freddy now apparently has an ice cream truck that he just leaves outside the power plant where he works, which wouldn't be suspicious at all. Even though Freddy was set free, why would all of his fun toys still be accessible? Would the police not have taken this stuff as evidence?
Freddy's home.
Even Tim's wife is starting to give him shit for what happened, and I kind of agree. If a razor-bladed monster was about to harm my daughter, I'm unloading the entire magazine. Before he leaves for the station, his one daughter tells him he can't kill Freddy because doing so will only make things worse. So what, does she know he's going to become some dream demon? Meanwhile, the parents have made their way to the power plant, and Tim has one of his officers watching his home while he's at work. The parents discover Freddy's little house of horrors, and the police really should have collected this stuff.
This was Mary's. My Mary.
They straight up left behind items that belonged to some of the murdered children. No wonder Freddy was able to get away with this for so long with such an incompetent police force. Meanwhile, we're back with Sega CD Vision as Freddy is stalking outside the Blocker's home. Could they have not come up with a better last name than Blocker? What's wrong with Smith? Anyways, Freddy kills the officer, and it looks like they just drizzled some ketchup on his chicken. This was just shown on TV, so they really couldn't do any of the more graphic stuff that the movies were known for. Freddy stalks the young Blocker girls from a window, and for some reason when we're in Freddy Vision, you can hear all these screams and weird voices. I'm guessing that's supposed to represent how crazy he is, but it's a little on the nose. The parents arrive at the Blocker's home because they believe Freddy's come to finish what he started, but the idiots don't notice him walking right behind them. Tim arrives and basically tells them to get lost, but if they hadn't shown up, it's likely his family would probably be dead. Anyways, the parents decide to check the power plant once again, and this time Tim has also made his way there.
You think you was gonna get rid of me?
Well, they find Freddy and are ready to blow him away, until Tim tells Prosecutor Deeks to drop his weapon. He wants to do things by the book, bring Freddy in legally. Although, can you bring in a man who is just set free and has yet to commit another crime? Although Tim does have a change of heart when Freddy starts mentioning his daughters again, so he grabs a can of gasoline that was conveniently lying on the ground and douses Freddy with it.
I'll be back! I'm free!
Luckily, Freddy's much thicker stuntman takes the burn for him, but I think a gunshot would have been a much easier way of doing this. In the films, Freddy was burnt alive by the parents of Springwood, not just some random lieutenant who just happened to move there. Tim tries acting like they're all in this together, but he was the one who decided barbecuing Freddy was the way to go, not them.
Springwood's nightmares are just beginning.
After Freddy's death, Tim starts having weird dreams as if Freddy is still out there, but that couldn't be true, could it? These are just nightmares, and these cuts on his face are purely coincidental. That morning, he drops his daughters off at school, and he really needs to get this one into therapy. Don't ask me for names though, because I don't know.
1, 2, I'm coming for you.
Well, that's not how the rhyme goes at all. But does this mean Tim is still dreaming, or does Freddy have a hold of his daughter? Freddy's even leaving him love notes at work, so this must be a dream, right? Officer Gene Stratton comes into work to tell Tim that some FBI agents are coming into town because they think they can tie Freddy to killings across the country. But that's going to be hard to do when he's dead. So now Tim has to come clean and tell Gene what they did, and you'd think he might arrest him or something, but no, he basically hails him a hero.
You're not a criminal. You're a hero.
Gene decides he's gonna hide the body at the nearby junkyard because what Tim did was the right thing. Tim is having even more visions which, following the logic of the films, makes no sense. And Gene calls him to let him know he found another body while at the power plant dealing with Freddy. When Gene shows Tim where he puts Freddy's body, Tim wants him to open it because he has to be sure Freddy is still there. Gene even claims he welded it shut, so I'm not sure how they're just gonna pry the trunk open. And just like Star Wars, somehow he returned. When they make their way to the power plant where the second body was found, it turns out it isn't Freddy, but Prosecutor Deeks. Also, his eyes magically open when they go to this other shot. Tim's starting to lose it. Even a little lovin' from his wife can't take his mind off what's happening.
Leave me alone! Not another dream!
His daughter was finally starting to come around, and I think he just set her back a few more years. Things only get worse when she starts singing to her father, saying, "He told me you killed him." They keep doing the rhyming thing in this episode, but it's just so silly. I understand they're trying to do something similar to the 1-2 Freddy's coming for you, but it doesn't quite work here. Everything is getting to Tim so much that he wants to leave Springwood for good because he feels like Freddy has poisoned it. I don't know why, but he's acting more emotional than the teenagers in the films that actually had Freddy stalking them. Tim makes his way to the dentist, mainly because he wants to talk to him about leaving Springwood, but also because of his damn chipped tooth.
Who said anything about the feds? Who said anything about the fit?
What, are you playing with me?
Gene comes in to speak to Tim of this nonsense of leaving town, and things get confusing because Gene claims Freddy's body is still in the trunk and the FBI are nothing to worry about. So was it a dream earlier, or is this a dream? The show seems to play with the rules of what Freddy can or cannot do quite a bit. The dentist's assistant comes in to put him under for his little tooth repair, and I guess this was their one and only moment to get someone in their underwear.
I'm afraid they'll all have to go. You tell Freddy when it doesn't hurt.
Yeah, Freddy comes in once Tim is put under, and it's a pretty bloodless kill. Although in the real world, it just looks like he had a reaction to the gas or something. No More Mr. Nice Guy is an interesting look at Freddy's origin, although why it focuses on some random cop and not the daughters, I don't know. Targeting kids was kind of Freddy's thing, and he didn't go after adults all that often, and usually only if they were getting in the way of him trying to murder their children. And that kind of misses the point of why Freddy went after the kids. It would be easy to take out the parents that murdered him, but going after their children would be much more devastating for them. I don't think the episode is bad, it's kind of interesting. I would have preferred a film version of Freddy's backstory, which had been talked about for decades, but we can't have everything now, can we? Freddy's Nightmares didn't last very long, and went on for 2 seasons consisting of 44 episodes in total. The entire thing was basically a cash grab that only got cheaper as time went on, and because of the cheapening in quality, the viewership continued to drop. Even Robert Shea, the founder of New Line, basically abandoned the show after the first 5 or 6 episodes and just let them do their own thing because he really didn't care. Bad writing, an incredibly small budget, and complaints from parents because in parts of the United States, the show was shown in syndication around 4 in the afternoon were all reasons why ultimately the show was cancelled. Most that worked on the show are even embarrassed to admit that they were on it. Future superstar Brad Pitt appeared in an episode, along with Tank Girl's Lori Petty. After cancellation of Freddy's Nightmares, most of the crew has moved over to work on Tales from the Crypt, which greatly benefited that show because Tales from the Crypt was headed straight for cancellation as well due to its high production cost. But luckily, those that had to work with the non-existent budget of Freddy's Nightmares were able to help bring things down. Freddy's Nightmares is an interesting footnote in the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. It pretty much only existed to be more product and feed into the Freddy hysteria, but it was also likely part of the reason for the oversaturation and eventual downfall of the franchise. Still though, it's interesting to see what they were able to pull off for such a small television show. Have you seen Freddy's Nightmares, and what do you think of it? If you'd like me to touch upon the other Freddy-centered episodes of the series, let me know, because those are the only ones I would really have any interest in covering. Anyways, that's all for today. Thank you so much for watching, and remember, whatever you do, don't fall asleep.
Sweet dreams.